My girlfriend left me for a life coach, saying I was too negative and blocking her energy. 2 months later, she called from a motel, asking for gas money. He'd monetized her vibes. I'd invested in boundaries. Funny how positive costs more than it promises. My name's Mark, 34, a sysadmin at a mid-size company. Life with Taylor, 31, a yoga instructor, was normal until she fell hard for life coaches. Morning affirmations turned into marathons of Evan radiance. Linen-clad, slow voice, preaching abundance energy and thought blocks. I laughed until the subscriptions hit. $149 per month, premium, $39 webinars, structured water, $429. Taylor called me toxic rational and unplugged the microwave because it kills food frequency. The public humiliation started on my birthday in Austin. At dinner, she toasted the courage to leave low-vibration people and dropped Evan's book on the table, Grow or Rot. On her stories, I became dead weight. I tried to roll with it. Everyone has weird hobbies, but this hobby came with a card reader. Little things shifted first. Sage bundles in every room. Blue painter's tape over the Nest Cam because devices watch your aura. She labeled our fridge shelves high vibe and dense foods. My leftovers were dense. She moved my AeroPress to the garage, next to the breaker panel and my Pelican case. Caffeine is fear, she said, waving a copper pyramid she bought for $89. When I rolled my eyes, she posted another story about partners who refused to ascend. Then came the money clearing. Evan's app had a sacred payment portal. Taylor set weekly gifts to the universe. $222, $333, sometimes $555. I asked where the money landed. Energy returns, she said. My bank app showed ACH pulls to a Delaware LLC. When I pressed, she said, scarcity talk shrinks us. She put quartz points on my desk at home and told me not to infect them with Jira tickets. I brought them back to the kitchen. She moved them back with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Her friends formed a chorus. The Sunday circle met in our living room, mats around the coffee table, candles sweating wax onto my PS5. They taught her words to use on me: financial safety, emotional labor rent, vibration tax. When I asked what vibration tax meant, her friend Lila said, he knows. They laughed when I mentioned the electric bill. I paid it anyway and replaced the tripped GFCI she jammed with a salt lamp. Austin became a map of her new faith. South Congress crystal shops. A mural with angel numbers. A kombucha place with mason jars marked gratitude. She dragged me to a retreat teaser in a strip mall off Ben White. Evan appeared via projector, beard, wrist malice, soft diction. He said, partners who block expansion are bricks tied to balloons. Taylor squeezed my knee and whispered, hear that? I heard the pitch, $3,999 for the leap. I set a boundary. We don't spend $4,000 on a seminar. She nodded, then booked it on our joint card while I was patching servers at 2 a.m. I woke to a push notification, $3,999 to Radiance Path, followed by $249 for a digital detox kit. I confronted her at 7:12 a.m., coffee in a paper cup because the AeroPress was still exiled. She said, money is made up. Energy is real. I said, the visa statement is also very real. On my birthday, the Austin dinner, she gave a speech. To the courage to leave low-vibration people. People clapped. She slid Evan's book to me with a post-it, Grow or Rot. My present from her was a white hoodie that said, allowing. The tag still on, $119. I smiled for the photo, then later watched the clip on her story with captions. Some men fear expansion. My phone buzzed with 3 DMs from strangers calling me rigid. She slept like a rock that night. I scrolled the joint account and screenshotted everything. I tried trade-offs. I offered, cancel the retreat, keep the $149 per month, call it a hobby. She said, negotiation is scarcity cosplay. She started cleansing my toolbox with incense, waving smoke over a fluke multimeter, and the torque set I've had since college. Your tools hold anger, she said. My tools hold screws, I said. She posted a clip labeled "Humor is a Trauma Response." The rituals crowded out regular life. She taped affirmations to the bathroom mirror. I am a portal for wealth. Over my floss. She set alarms for breath breaks, then blew out candles at random times because fire is masculine. Twice she left the stove on low under a copper pot of structured broth, warping the pan. I replaced it and a burner cap, $1.62, and moved our fire extinguisher to the end of the counter. The last straw wasn't a chant. It was accounting. I found a spreadsheet on her MacBook titled Ascension Tithe. It listed my salary, a 10% relationship healing surcharge, and notes like, Mark owes the field $440. Owes the field. She had also created a Venmo request to me for $88 labeled cord cutting. In the memo, she added a scissors emoji. I breathed. Screenshot. Timestamp. 21:43, Thursday. I made tea in the electric kettle she hadn't banned yet, and I watched the kettle switch click off. I decided to stop debating theology with an invoice. Boundaries work better than sermons. I opened a new note on my phone. Receipts, Radiance. Then I pulled my wallet, checked the card numbers, and started drawing a line she was about to make me cross in permanent marker. After a $3,200 facilitator certification, Taylor adopted a syrupy guru tone and, 2 weeks later, hauled out half our stuff. Note on the counter. Our soul contract is complete. Evan and I are twin flames. I choose love, not fear. Attached demands, bullet-pointed in pastel font. Half the condo equity, a slice of my 401k, and 18 months of support because her emotional labor fueled my success. Online, I was a controller, blocking her energy. At a San Antonio co-working space, she ran a live transformation demo, using me as the cautionary tale of scarcity mindset. I screenshotted her slide with my initials and a cartoon brick tied to a balloon. I hired Grace, a sharp attorney. Grace's intake was merciless and kind. Separate what you feel from what you can prove. I sent her a folder. Deed recorded 11 months before our wedding, separate property. Mortgage statements, purchase price $348,000, principal paid down $22,400, estimated equity $101,000. I added the Radiance ledger, ACH pulls to a Delaware LLC, timestamps, $3,999 leap charge. Grace flagged one thing. The credit card I had lazily called Joint was in my name with Taylor as authorized user. Good, she said. Authorized user access is revocable. At 8:32, I removed Taylor from the card, requested a reissued number, and enabled account alerts. I left the Joint checking alone. We'd need a clean accounting. The condo was suddenly quiet. No sage ash in my keyboard, no crystals on the sills. I inventoried what she took. Vitamix, linen set, half our books, the copper pyramid, my PS5, claimed as energy sink, and the framed UT diploma. I photographed the empty wall hook and captioned it for myself. Possession is not title. I changed the August smart lock codes and kept a paper list in the fireproof safe with the birth certificates. I set a Nest schedule she hadn't taped over. I turned off guest Wi-Fi. Nate, my buddy who left APD for PI work, heard Evan Radiance and barked a laugh. That's Kevin Barlow out of Tulsa. Used to be Coach Kev, then Evan Radiance. Changes states, leaves debt and devotees. By late afternoon, he sent me a one-page driver's license photo, 2 dissolved LLCs, 1 open, Radiance Path LLC, Delaware. Small claims in Oklahoma, $6,270 default, and a Texas DBA filing 3 months old. I printed it for Grace. Patterns matter, she said, sliding it into a manila folder. Taylor's separation proposal arrived via Google Doc. Comments turned off. She wanted immediate occupancy of the condo to incubate my practice, plus a vibration stipend of $1,200 per month. Her timeline: I move out in 7 days. I'll consult. I typed in a reply suggestion Taylor couldn't see. I didn't debate the mysticism. I moved data. At 1914 I pulled our mint exports, printed transaction lists, and highlighted radiance charges in yellow. I added Venmo screenshots, $222, gifts to the universe, notes with star emojis. Grace filed for temporary orders requesting exclusive use of the condo, restraint on dissipation, and removal of Taylor as authorized user on any account in my name. She reminded me Texas is community property, but separate property stays separate if you can show the paper. Keep everything, even the ridiculous, she said, tapping the Ascension Tithe spreadsheet header. We calendared the hearing for 2 weeks out. I forwarded the calendar invite to myself twice. That night Taylor posted a story from some turquoise couch. Leaving scarcity, choosing love. Her followers piled on. Pay her king. One DM called me financially abusive. I replied to none. I made tea, opened a clean yellow legal pad, and wrote inventory A to L. Under C, copper pyramid, receipt shows her card, $89. Under P, PS5, my receipt, serial number, warranty. Under D, diploma mine. I wrote intangibles, peace, sleep, and left it as a joke I'd understand. At 7:03 the next morning, Taylor texted, kind notice. I'm returning with movers at 10 to get the altar and my plants. Please don't be here. Your energy spikes my cortisol. I replied, I will be present to inventory. You may retrieve your personal items only. I set my phone on the counter, opened the iPhone voice memo app, Texas is one-party consent, and laid out blue painter's tape zones, yours, ours, mine. When she arrived with 2 friends in matching hoodies, allowing. I greeted the movers, handed them the taped map, and pointed at the tape. They nodded like men who'd seen worse. Taylor swept in with a huff. This hostility is a trauma pattern. I said, we're following the pattern the law uses. She tried to lift my Pelican case. I put a hand on it. Tools mine. Lila reached for the PS5 box I dragged back from her trunk the week before. I pointed to the serial number photo and the receipt. Lila said, what's yours is ours. I said, no, not for separate property. The movers kept their eyes down and carried plants to the yours zone. They left with the altarpieces, yoga blocks, and a carton labeled retreat wardrobe. After the door shut, I photographed the floor, the door jamb, no damage, and the timestamp, 10:47. I emailed Grace, retrieval complete, no incidents. I attached 5 photos and the voice memo. Nate texted a screenshot, Kevin/Evan advertising, Twin Flame Texas tour. I flagged the ad for Grace and said nothing to Taylor. At lunch I froze my credit with the bureaus, turned off paperless on the mortgage so mailed statements would stack like a physical alibi, and set up a separate payroll account to catch my next paycheck. At 16:22 I got a Venmo request for $88 labeled, cord cutting ceremony resupply. I declined. I added it to the ledger. Then I scheduled a locksmith for the garage side door Taylor had given to a plant guy last spring. The invoice said $189. Worth it. Grace called at 17:55. We're set. Temporary orders hearing is the 10th. Between now and then, no fights, no sermons, and no gifts to the universe. I said, understood. I printed her email and slid it into the folder behind Nate's one-pager. Paper beats perfume. Receipts carry more weight than crystals. If Taylor wanted devotion, she now had a different altar. A stack of documents with my name spelled exactly the same way every time. Nate found a field retreat near Santa Fe. Week-long, $3,800, 37 spots, $22,000 venue deposit, and Taylor listed as co-facilitator. The crash engineering was simple. He'd go in as Nathan Glenn, sold an e-commerce brand, seeking meaning, and I'd sit back collecting timestamps. The hook would be a lunch line about cash-heavy spiritual businesses getting audited. If Evan flinched, we'd know where the bones were buried. I hesitated until Taylor posted that I'd launched a psychic attack on her mission. I stopped being polite. Do it, I told Nate. He built the legend. LinkedIn shell, Calendly, burner iPhone, Amex with my name nowhere. He drove west in a dusty 4Runner with 2 Pelican cases, one with clothes, one with lenses and a handheld scanner. The transformational ranch looked like a wedding venue repurposed with Buddha statues and rental feathers. Sign at the gate. Phones sleep here. Digital waves block prosperity. A cedar lockbox took their devices with white tags. 34 attendees besides staff. Name badges printed in a gentle serif. Evan in fresh white, hair tied. Sermon on non-attachment to money. Then an immediate $1,500 VIP upsell for private clearing. Taylor, honey-voiced, ran the card reader, hands shaking as big charges cleared. Nate's body cam caught the square screen. Radiance Path LLC. Santa Fe address that matched an Airbnb. He paid base tuition in full with a prepaid visa plus the VIP. I winced and told myself it was evidence. We split roles. Nate floated. I tracked. He texted through a watch with a hidden SIM. I sat at my kitchen island with coffee, the Radiance ledger open, and an analog notepad for event times. 9:07 opening circle. 11:22 breathwork sales pitch. 12:40 buffet lunch, quinoa salad, aluminum chafers. At 13:03, Nate delivered the line. A buddy at IRS says the new algorithm flags cash-heavy wellness outfits. Evan's jaw flexed. Taylor's smile froze a millimeter too long. At 13:09, Evan whispered to the merch girl and walked toward the office near the catering closet. The office was a coat room with a folding table, thermal printer, and a cardboard banker's box labeled Alter Cash. Nate eyed the box when Taylor ushered him in for his private clearing. The camera saw banded 20s. Taylor misted him with rose water and said, "We welcome the abundant stream." He said, "Do you 1099 facilitators?" She blinked. "We're a family." He asked for a receipt. She wrote energy exchange and no tax ID. 1518 I called Grace. Pattern, receipts, and an event in our state line of travel. "What's my lane?" She said, "Gather, don't poke. If they mishandle funds or use Taylor's image against you, fine. Otherwise, stay boring." I promised to stay boring. I failed at 1931 because the spark was literal. A paraffin candle under a copper singing bowl had softened the adhesive on a silk banner. During ego death breathwork, the banner slipped, brushed a tea light, and licked a tapestry. Nate's camera caught the first thread blacken. He stood, killed the flame with a wool throw, then yanked the battery string lights off the mandala. Someone screamed. Evan scolded, "Attachment to form!" The ranch manager sprinted in with a 2.5 lb Kita extinguisher and blasted the corner. Powder everywhere. Taylor coughed, wide-eyed, then went back to soothing everyone. "It's a cleansing." The manager plucked a melted tea light cup from the carpet and said, "No open flames in Cedar Hall. It's in your contract." Evan smiled that soft smile. "We honor boundaries." 5 minutes later, he was at the office, repacking the cash box under a shawl. Nate texted me a photo of the melted cup on a receipt spike. I annotated the timestamp, printed it, and slid it into the folder. That night, Evan hosted the VIPs in Starlight Cabin. Taylor handled abundance tithes. Nate asked, "Do you keep escrow?" Evan said, "The field provides." He floated a discount if anyone brought a friend for Twin Flame Texas tour. In the corner, a whiteboard, venue due Friday, $22,000. Under it, cash goal, $35K. Taylor drew angel numbers, 222. Next to it like a promise. At 22:11, Nate slid me a clip, Evan counting stacks on the folding table, lips moving, 20, 40, 60. And a whisper, "Keep 10% in a petty box." The petty box was a cigar tin with a sticker, "Gratitude." Taylor tucked in a wad and wrote, "Alter restock." No one logged names. No one printed itemized receipts. The ranch manager popped in, saw the burner candles relit, and said, "Last warning. I wasn't interested in playing fire marshal. I was inventorying leverage." The next morning, I sent Nate a grocery list. Request an invoice with an EIN, ask for a W-9, ask who holds the venue contract, and save any PDF copies they emailed the group. He nodded on camera, gave his best rich guy dumb grin, and asked Taylor for a W-9 for my accountant. Her smile thinned. We handle it post-retreat. He said, Great. What's the legal name? She glanced at Evan. He said, Radiance Path is a trust. Nate said, So, no N? Evan changed the subject. Let's go greet the sunrise. By noon, the post-fire anxiety curdled into gossip. A woman in a mauve wrap whispered that Evan had recalibrated her payment plan in the office and kept her card. Nate watched 2 attendees cancel cards by the stables. Taylor did an integrity circle and told a parable about doubters. In her pocket, the square reader blinked low battery. She plugged it into a power strip already loaded with salt lamps. The breaker tripped. The room sighed. A physical metaphor. The circuit was overdrawn. I stared at the word I'd written on my pad, spark, and underlined it twice. The fire had been small. The audit would be bigger. By day 3, Nate's texts read like weather reports for a storm that refused to move. Quinoa mounds, activated almonds, lecturelets about how pyramids store intention like capacitors. A biophysics PhD named Soren corrected the vocabulary once, dielectric, not light sponge, and was gently exiled to the back row, so as not to disrupt the flow. Nate captioned a photo of the seating chart, Soren in Siberia. Over lunch he planted the audit rumor cleanly, like a tech bro confessing he'd once optimized his taxes and felt bad. Evan's eyes flashed only a second, but the camera caught it. At dawn the next morning, a rented white Tesla slipped from the gravel lot. The cigar tin petty box and the banker's box labeled Alter Cash went with it. Evan left a note on the folding table. Nature rebalances. Hold the field. Taylor spun. A living lesson in non-attachment, she told the circle, voice syrup slow while her hands trembled around the square reader. Let's honor the venue with direct gifts. Venmo me, and we'll settle the energy. The ranch manager was less poetic. He arrived with a clipboard and a copy of the contract. Your balance check bounced. 22,000 due by 5 or I shut you down and call the sheriff. He tapped the no open flames clause for good measure. Refund murmur turned to chorus. 2 attendees asked for chargebacks on the spot. The whiteboard still read, cash goal, $35K, now circled like a bruise. Nate asked for a receipt with EIN. Taylor smiled without teeth. We're processing. The manager said, no EIN, no proof, no continued occupancy. He pointed at the starlight cabin. And blow out the candles. I sat at my kitchen island, pen thudding a metronome against the legal pad. The website listed Taylor as co-facilitator, jointly responsible. I took screenshots of the About page, cached copies, WHOIS lookup with the DBA. I sent Grace the packet. She wrote back 2 words, joint liability. Taylor tried to dam the flood with plastic. 2 cards declined. A third wheezed through for $4,000. She posted a story, close-up of her wet eyelashes, choosing love in pressure. Comments filled with heart emojis from people not owed refunds. On site, Soren cleared his throat and gave a 5-minute lesson on sunk cost fallacy. Throwing more at a failing process doesn't make the process work. Half the room actually listened. The other half stared at their phones and called banks. By noon, the ranch manager shut Cedar Hall and locked the gear closet. You can hold circles by the stables. No electricity. Taylor gathered everyone under a shade sail and murmured about lineage tests. Lila passed a basket labeled gratitude. It rattled thinly. Nate texted a photo of the basket bottom and then of Taylor's hands shaking as she typed into her banking app. At 14:12, Taylor called me. First contact in days. Mark, be bigger than this. Wire 22. I'll pay you back after Twin Flame, Texas. I stared at the quiet condo, the Pelican case, the taped zones still faintly visible on the floor. Send me the contract, EIN, vendor list, and an escrow plan, I said. Or accept that this is an Evan problem. She hissed. You're petty. I said. I'm precise. Then I hit end and logged the call. Nate watched a van load of attendees bail, luggage bumping across the gravel like subdued maracas. One woman cried into a scarf. Another cursed into her speakerphone at Chase. Taylor held a repair circle that became a Q&A line about refunds. She promised processing in divine timing. The manager came back at 16:37 with a deputy in tan. 5 p.m., he repeated. Keys if you can't pay. Taylor swallowed. Her throat clicked on camera. At 16:59, 3 Zelle notifications hit her phone. Not enough. The deputy stood, polite and bored. Time, he said. The manager closed the binder. Cedar Hall, locked. Starlight Cabin, locked. Power to the great room, off at the panel. Retreat over 2 days early. Taylor read a closing poem into the heat while people dragged suitcases to rideshares that couldn't find the ranch pin. Dust plumed and then settled. Evan's Tesla was now Evan's alibi, gliding across some 2-lane toward another believer. Taylor had no car. She'd carpooled with him. Nate offered her a ride into town purely to keep the camera rolling. She said she needed to integrate and asked attendees for lifts. Soren, saint or fool, drove her to a Motel 6 off Cerrillos. Nate filmed her at the vending machine, exact change in coins, eyes red. Back in Austin, I moved money from the joint to the household account for utilities and sent Grace a memo. Retreat collapse. Venue threatens police. Taylor personally collected via Venmo. Receipts scarce. Grace replied, do not fund. Document. I stepped onto the balcony, looked at the skyline heat shimmer, and exhaled a breath I hadn't noticed I was holding since the banner caught fire. That night, Taylor posted a photo of a motel bedspread and wrote, the desert drained my battery, not my faith. I closed Instagram. The desert had drained something else. Goodwill, patience, the assumption that she was merely misguided. The meter now ran on paperwork. The lesson wasn't non-attachment. It was attachment to contracts, to EINs, to names that match on bank accounts and tax forms. Evan floated. Taylor floated. The bills didn't. Back in Austin, Taylor walked in with incense and accusations. You're distorting my field, she said, waving smoke at the breaker panel like it had offended her ancestors. The ranch had expelled them. Refunds were demanded. The Venmo notes, gratitude, abundance, alter restock, now read like evidence. My phone lit with BBB complaints and a forwarded intake from the AG's consumer division. 2 small claim suits named Taylor as payment handler. She texted me a link to a GoFundMe titled Legal Defense for Lightworkers, and then called. You could end this, she said. Cover the retainer. I said, with what, your grandma inheritance? She exhaled. I invested it in a Costa Rica center. I checked the registry. There was no center, only a PDF brochure and a photo of jungle stock art. Grace filed our response packet with the ordinary calm of a person who doesn't hashtag anything. She built a spine. Deed predating marriage, amortization schedules, my 401k contributions sourced to premarital accounts, Taylor's transaction history showing $41,000 in retreats, courses, certifications, and merch in 18 months. Grace slid the last page across the table to me. This torpedoes hardship, she said. Judges notice discretionary spending. I nodded and kept my voice even. Anger wastes ink. Temporary orders day felt like an oil change. Fluorescent lights, a clerk with a stapler rhythm, lawyers trading manila folders like menus. Taylor showed up in white linen and a tan that looked leased. Evan, now absent, had become Ethan Blaze online within 48 hours. Phoenix address. Identical pitch. Nate printed the new site and handed it to me in the hallway. Same font, new volcano, he said. Inside, Taylor's attorney tried to sell the court on energetic support as a multiplier for my salary. Her holding of space allowed him to ascend professionally. The judge peered over readers. Quantify that. Silence. The attorney pivoted to unfair enrichment. Grace slid the ledger forward. 8 pages of Radiance payments, timestamps, and notes in Taylor's emoji. The judge asked, these were her choices? I said, yes, Your Honor. Taylor whispered, they were callings. Support was denied. Assets traced to me stayed with me. The condo, bought 11 months before our wedding, remained separate property. Any community interest would have been principal reduction since marriage, which Grace had already calculated and I offered to reimburse to avoid drama. Taylor claimed I'd stolen her tools because the PS5 blocked flow. The judge didn't smile. Return personal effects. No more, no less. We stipulated a date and a constable window. I kept the serial number lists folded in my pocket like a talisman. Then the venue debt landed. The ranch manager's affidavit laid out the bounce check and the 5 p.m. shutdown. The website captured Taylor as co-facilitator and payment handler. The judge read slowly, then tapped the page. "You collected funds?" Taylor said, "In service to the field. Then you'll service the debt." He ordered a payment plan. $22,000 in installments, first due in 30 days, proof of payments filed with the court. Taylor's face froze at an angle Instagram would never post. Evan, now Ethan, wasn't on the docket. Paper chooses the person who signs. After, in the hallway, Taylor cornered me between two ficus trees. "You did this," she hissed. I said, "Your website did." She called me heartless. I measured each word. "I'm not your enemy. Numbers don't pick sides." She stormed out and left a smear of rose oil on the door. She moved in with her sister in Richardson, took a job at a vitamin shop with a chalkboard sign that said, "Ask about liver joy," and kept posting light codes. Videos of her tracing invisible sigils into a ring light. The comments called her brave. The AG letters kept coming. A plaintiff served her at the shop. Lila filmed it and captioned, "Darkness tries when light rises." Nate texted me the clip with a yikes emoji and a link to Ethan's Phoenix seminar. Same tears, same $3,999, Ignite track, same altar photos, different rocks. Occasionally, late at night, Taylor sent me voice notes. "Money is a game. We can start over." I saved them, labeled by time. I wasn't hoarding. I was building a timeline for when memory softens and facts get opinionated. Grace kept me disciplined. No snark, no subtweets, no retorts to mutuals. "Boring wins," she said. I walked around the condo and let the quiet feel like a result. On pickup day, the constable watched as Taylor boxed the copper pyramid and her stacks of Evan/Ethan books. She tried to lift my pelican again. "No," I said, pointing to the receipt taped inside the lid. She shook with anger or breathwork. I couldn't tell. At the door she paused and whispered, "Someday you'll regret choosing court over love." I said, "Someday you'll regret choosing sermons over receipts." The constable cleared his throat. She left. Nate kept eyes on Phoenix. Ethan reemerged on a patio, bracelets chiming. A desert sunset behind him like a green screen. "Non-attachment to money," he said, and then sold a $1,500 VIP. Slow motion rerun. Different zip code. Same script. I closed the tab and the manila folder, then set them both back in the fireproof safe. Boundary, not revenge. Paperwork, not prayer. Quiet, finally, felt like the only thing worth paying for. 2 months after the split, my phone lit at 041 with no caller ID. Taylor, Motel 6 outside Flagstaff. Buzzing ballast on the line. Vending machine hum behind her. "Can you cash app $60 for gas?" He took the cash and bailed. Meaning Evan, now Ethan, or whatever alias survived the week. I stared at the ceiling fan and measured my breath like an EMT. "I invested in boundaries, not your vibes," I said. Click. A minute later. Text bubble, 3 dots, then a paragraph asking for a reboot, a fresh container. I wrote, "My range isn't compatible with yours. Try another dimension." I hit send, then blocked, then slept like a person who keeps a folder in a fireproof safe. Paperwork did what incense never could. It finished things. Grace filed the last receipts. Proof of Taylor's first $500 installment to the ranch, proof of returned items, proof of canceled authorizations. The court's beige banner at the top of the portal finally read, "Disposed." I printed the docket anyway and slid it behind the amortization schedule like a bookmark to an old chapter. The constable's card stayed in my wallet for no reason beyond the beige comfort of a name and badge number. At the bar, Nate still laughs. It's like finding out Santa isn't real, then realizing he stole your rent and leased a Tesla with it. He keeps the alias board in his office. Coach KEV, Evan Radiance, Ethan Blaze, connected by red thread like a B-movie detective set. The biophysics PhD, Soren, emailed a draft. Monetized mysticism, exploitation dynamics in pseudoscientific coaching communities. Nathan Glenn gets a footnote. The candle incident is case 3. His conclusion is dry and useful. Ambiguity is a business model. I read it twice and sent him 3 edits on jargon. He thanked me and asked if a judge really said, quantify that. I told him yes, and it should be on a t-shirt. I'm seeing Emma, physics teacher, 33, dry wit, black coffee, blue Salomon boots. First date was tacos and a short lecture on why structured water is a phrase for people who've forgotten phases exist. Second date was a matinee and a walk by the river. We split the check without theater. She brings a canvas bag with a paperback and an orange. At my place, there's no incense haze, no charged quartz, no taped-over cameras. There's a plant that thrives because sunlight and water are adequate technology. Bill's autodraft. Quiet arrives like weather, not ceremony. Taylor launched Rebirth after fake mentors. $60/hour zooms. Calendared through a pastel site with stars in the margins. She frames herself as a survivor of charlatans and never names Evan/Ethan, the man-shaped reset button who keeps his hair and his pitch and loses only aliases. Her sister in Richardson says she's being brave between shifts at the vitamin shop with the chalkboard that reads, "Ask about liver joy. I do not ask. I do not look. If a link lands in my messages, I archive it. My nostalgia, when it shows up uninvited, gets labeled and filed like any other stray receipt." Nate still watches Phoenix. Ethan's patio videos harvest sunset colors like coupons. $3,999, Ignite. $1,500 VIP. $222, Field Tithe. Same square reader, new potted cacti. Different rocks, same script. The AG's office logged 3 more complaints. A podcast ran an episode. A Facebook group traded refund templates. The cycle spins. There will be new linens, new mantras, new candles near new tapestries. There will be another ranch and a manager with a clipboard who reads "No open flames" out loud like a prayer. The paradox holds. Positivity sold retail costs more than it promises. Cultures built on abundance adore your wallet's elasticity. I used to roll my eyes at that like a pundit. Now I write it down like an electrician. Rating, load, breaker. If the circuit reads 15 amps, you don't plug in 6 salt lamps and a space heater and call the heat love. You rewire, or you flip the switch off, or you leave the room. This weekend, altitude, not ascension. Emma and I throw packs into her hatchback at 610, permits printed, topo map folded to the ridge, 3 liters each, duct tape wrapped around a Nalgene, a cheap pulse oximeter for the joke of it. No crystals, no chanting, just steady feet and a sky that doesn't charge monthly. We stop at a turnout with a view of the hill country, the morning flat as a receipt. At the trailhead, I set my phone to airplane mode and slide it into the hip belt pocket. The world goes quiet without asking for a tithe. We walk. The only altar is a cairn of ordinary stones someone stacked because hands like to make small, honest piles.